All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case over on Rumble, of course. Unpause and repause, so I don't have to see my ugly mug more than twice. It's always a good decision. Hell froze over, so we got to talk about Whoopi Goldberg today. First, though, I wanted to talk about depression. It's something, one of the little self-improvement things that I want to do, so to speak. We got to talk about Honda. They're considering moving some of their manufacturing back to the United States, which would be a big boon for the economy. Trump's tariffs have already begun to work. Of course, we're just inside of his first 100 days. It appears that there is some positive momentum with regards to that. So we'll talk about that. And they're also planning the overhaul of the Endangered Species Act. Now, I support environmentalism. I support preventing species generally from going extinct. But there are a few notorious examples in here where you've got some problems with that particular act. So we'll talk about those as well. Trump dares the Supreme Court to do something. That article is more flippant. It's from AOL. It's just the title of it I thought was really funny when I actually saw it the other day. So that'll be fun to talk about. MAGA's class warfare against knowledge workers is personal. I promised to talk about this particular news article. For some reason, why is my live stream off on the side too? Okay, I had an extra tab open. I don't know exactly what happened with that. Titus Flavius Vespasianus. Anyone else have a boner? Not at the moment, no. Yeah, sometimes people say weird stuff in chat. I actually enjoy this very greatly. Even if it's critical. I mean, it's still funny. One tall order. 2006 Honda Civic. 2006 Honda Civic. 2006 Honda Civic. 2006 Honda Civic. Goodness. Cooking Inferno. Anyone else notice that Styx seems to be going on a food tour of Rutland? I'm actually jealous, but he needs to try some Indian food. Dot, not feather. Oh, I love Indian food. We've got two Indian restaurants. There's the Masala Corner that's in the downtown, and then there's one other that actually is in the old TD Bank on Main Street. It's pretty fun. I like it, but I have to be in the right mood for that kind of food. Oh yes, Little Haveli, Uncle Sham, you're correct. Ruron Sticks, President Trump hilariously roasted Adam Schiff, calling him watermelon head. That was comedy gold. I did not see that. Please, somebody link me on a Twitter DM. That would be funny. Watermelon. I mean, it is kind of apt. I call him Pussyface myself. Yeah. Silas, also repping from Rutland. Oh, nice to meet you. Local spots are pretty good. I like Little Haveli more. My favorite is Loose Luna. Hop and Moose is pretty good. Ernie's is pretty good. The Yellow Deli used to be really great, but I mean, I think that they've become a doomsday cult or something. I have a feeling that it's rather open-ended. Renovations are in progress. You know, we'll open it sometime in the future, but that time never actually comes. I have a feeling that they're not coming back. Yo, boy, Fargoff. What is that gay, furry, pornographic art in the bottom right? That is Stolas from Hell of a Boss. Ironically, the person who drew it is actually gay and lives in Rutland. Cool dude. One tall order. Sticks, have you heard Kanye's new song, World War III? No, but I probably should. Here, let me see. Yeah, Sleazy sells bobbleheads. He'll sell you anything. He'll sell you crack. Yeah, let me dock at that. World War III, official audio. Yeah, it's probably pretty good. We're allowed to have some bants before we get to the news. Cooking Inferno. Bar none, Indian cuisine has the best vegetarian offerings. Yes, a lot of it is vegetarian. I made paneer one time, actually, and came out perfect. You simply reduce milk down with something acidic and then solidify it, drain it off. You can compress it. You can also turn it into cottage cheese, actually. It's really easy to make. I was like, oh God, what am I doing? I'm going to mess this up. No, it actually came out just like you would get in a restaurant. And then you chop it up into chunks and then you cook it in the food. Oh boy, was it good. Yeah. I didn't add enough salt, though. It was a little bit unsalted. Ruron Sticks, what are your thoughts on watermelon? Good but messy in my view. I cannot eat watermelon, actually. It's not that I'm allergic or anything like that, but one time when I was a little kid, maybe 4 or something like that, I went to a birthday party for another kid, and they were serving watermelon. And I remember I liked it. I liked the flavor. But I got sick. I got food poisoning. It wasn't from the watermelon, almost certainly. It was probably from something else that I ate. But now I can't enjoy it. The same is true of crab rangoons, actually. One time, I was at a party from my dad's old place of employ, from the Mountain Creamery, and they had crab rangoons, and boy, oh boy, were they tasty. But then I got sick. I got food poisoning. Now I can't enjoy them. My brain is telling me, don't eat this particular dish. My mom is the same with onions, actually. Derek, Sticks, you gonna tell the people the truth about you and PPP and why he's not a fan of you? I have no actual clue. I literally do not know. Nor do I care. I know that you're goading me on so that Kino can get some clips or something like that. One tall order, I voted for Trump, not Biden, not some ninjas who went to that island. Why the fuck would you go to that island? Kanye West, World War III. Yeah, well, it sounds like interesting lyrics. Anyway, let's get to depression news. I suffer from depression sometimes. I do the best that I can to compensate. I find that there are several things that are very, very helpful, by the way. You gotta realize I'm in Vermont. Seasonal affective disorder is definitely a thing. In the cold, dark winter months, it's easy to get a little bit glum and unmotivated, and you're like moping around because like there's 100 days of sun a year in the state of Vermont, and so it becomes a problem. And then, of course, there's more clinical depression, which is more like even if you're in a warm, sunny area, you're still depressed and stuff like that. And life can grind you down. It can become a problem. There are some things you can do, though. One thing that I've always told people, this is the pep talk section of our news stories, because depression is on the rise. The reason for this is that people are becoming demotivated because you have generally a shit economy. You have more and more people slipping through the cracks. You have a mental health crisis because they're not willing to actually bring people into a medical system. They just do outpatient care. So they basically hand you bottles of pills and say, have at it. And then they rely entirely on antidepressants, not addressing the root cause of depression in many of these cases. Sometimes people have been abused. Sometimes people have fallen through the cracks. Sometimes people can't fucking find a job. They're a step from homelessness, completely reliant on government, things like that. And all sorts of other bullying comes to mind. Things of that nature. And no real attempt is made to address this particular crisis. So people become depressed. And then also, again, on top, you have seasonal affective, which is why suicide rates, if I remember correctly, are higher in colder, darker climates, if I remember. One thing that works, and it's cheap, by the way, chamomile. Instead of taking antidepressants, chamomile is actually used. There was, again, I mentioned it the other day. There was a cultural phenomenon in Peru, actually, where sometimes the wind comes off the mountains and it's really, really hot and dry and dusty. And it causes, for some odd reason, it causes suicides and things like that. And to combat this, the local people drink chamomile, actually. I've found it very uplifting. My problem is I build up a tolerance to it very quickly. And so I can only use it once in a while. So if I feel particularly glum or my insomnia is really, really bad, I'll take like 4 bags of the goddamn chamomile and put it in the cup to steep. And I'll smush them down too to get all the chamomile out. And it's exceptionally powerful. Oh, you'll go to sleep like a baby after that. The problem is, again, the average person is capable of using it more regularly than I am. I tend to build up a tolerance to things fairly quickly. Another thing, exercise, of course, getting exercise. Another thing, trying to build hobbies and skills and things like that into productivity. Money cannot buy happiness, but it's good to be able to choose the method of your misery. I believe that is the quote originally. So just being productive, trying to find things to do. If you're extremely busy, it's hard to ruminate on the things that are making you sad. So there's your pep talk of the day. I realize that depression is becoming more and more common, especially among the youth, which is regrettable. But it is able to be combated. Maybe not completely, but it can be ameliorated. And in some cases, people that have even chronic depression can find solitude. They're capable of, if they are capable of finding something that is meaningful, that they enjoy, it'll make it a lot easier. The pitfall of depression is that it's very difficult to get yourself motivated to actually find what is going to make you happy. That becomes much more difficult. So yes, I struggle with depression myself, especially in the seasonally affective sense. But there are methodologies by which you can try to get past it. I see King Biltong is there. As usual. Scott Steiner, Trump should commute James' sentence to match the days Papadopoulos spent in the slammer. Then a couple of days later, often to pardon her. This way she gets a taste of prison and gets epically trolled. See, I agree with you. Letitia James is currently facing mortgage fraud charges, among other things. She's in real big shit. Because apparently she claimed that her father was her husband on mortgage forms. And there's possible embezzlement there, among other things. I'm sure the investigation will go further. They'll do forensic analysis on her electronics. They'll probably find other things to throw at her. Show me the man, I'll show you the crime. What I suggest is that you let Letitia James spend a week in prison. Because, I mean, if there's any evidence at all, she's going to be found guilty. Let her spend a week in prison. Give her a shock to the system. Walk into her cell with a film crew and a piece of paper with a pardon on it that you've pre-signed. And say, hey, Letitia, all you have to do is sign this paper and you can leave right now. That's all that Trump has to do. It would be one of the most legendary trolls in history. Now, some people are saying, no, just throw the book at her and let her rot. But this would be so humiliating that it would be more punishment than actually simply keeping her in prison. At least in my opinion. One tall order. Want to see Sam Hyde and Co. stand up last Friday and it destroyed my sleep schedule. Didn't get home until after 2 a.m. Every night since then haven't slept more than 45 minutes at a time. Goodness. Yeah, that's some bad insomnia. Yeah, my insomnia contributes to my occasional depression, by the way. Yes, see, Captain Trips, BS, no quarter. I understand. I understand your premise. But humiliating someone in that sense, I mean, clearly she's never going to be working legal cases again, so her career is fundamentally over. Even if she gets found not guilty on all charges, her career is fundamentally over. You can humiliate her, though. Find her guilty, let her go to prison for a while, and then commute the sentence. And say, hey, you know, you were found guilty. I know that you tried to prosecute me under false pretenses, But I'm not the same kind of person. So I'm going to show you large S. You would humiliate her. The Democrats would not be able to complain about it in any way, shape, or form. She's still not going to be able to prosecute a case again. What do you have to lose? Yes, make her beg, exactly. That would be a huge power move. Anyways. Oh, this is something we have to talk about. I loved this. I was sent this video earlier, and it's from The View, right? Whoopi Goldberg is, ironically, hell has frozen over yet again. I hate to use that term over and over, but it keeps happening, so I have no choice. Whoopi Goldberg and I apparently agree basically on the Department of Education. She comes out and goes on a little bit of a rant, right? And she says, well, maybe it's a good thing that the Department of Education goes away. That way, people will, within their families and communities, they'll take more interest in their children's education. This is a great idea. This is exactly how you reform the educational system. If the family and, the community are involved with the raising of kids, it takes a village, that's the old term. I don't necessarily always agree with it, but in some cases it can be a positive thing. If people were to simply know what their children were to be taught, if they were to simply know about the school system, it would be a more positive world in my opinion. You got to realize, think of critical race theory, for example, being taught in schools, which has died out as a public argument because the liberals very quickly retreated from it once it was exposed. How was it exposed? A handful of people realized that it was happening, and they informed the public. The public went to school board meetings, realized that it was actually true, and began to complain about it. They got more active in their children's educations. If this hadn't happened, they'd still be teaching literal communism to kids in many of these schools. And in some cases, by the way, they still are. But many schools realized that it was not necessarily the greatest idea to continue and backed down. And so now, critical race theory, which is charlatanism and in and of itself oddly racist, is no longer being taught in many of these schools. The same is true of things like DEI. That's beginning to die out, especially on the government level, and in some cases even the educational level. These things are embattled because people become aware that they're actually going on. If people are unaware, if they're completely fucking ignorant, if they don't know that it's happening, there's nothing they can do to fight it. Once they know that it's happening, they can try to formulate a response. So, oddly enough, again, hell freezing over because Whoopi Goldberg is pretty far to the left. She has severe Trump derangement syndrome. Most of the things she says make absolutely no sense. She's fundamentally making the same argument that I've made for the destruction of the Department of Education. I find this absolutely goddamn hysterical. I'm watching this clip and I'm like, I can't even believe what I'm listening to, actually. This is Whoopi Goldberg we're talking about. This is not a normal liberal commentator. This is not a Bill Maher or somebody like that. Somebody who at least occasionally makes sense. This is somebody who 99% of the time is completely off fucking kilter. Very, very strange. Scott Steiner, Fannie Willis is also potentially facing federal charges for improperly misappropriating federal grants for anti-crime activities by using it as a slush fund. She should get the book. She earned it. In Fannie Willis's case, I wouldn't do the pardon thing. In Letitia James' case, because she's so egotistical, ritualistically humiliating her, I think would be more of a fitting punishment. Fannie Willis, just throw the book at her. That would be funny. Mr. Wonderful, I woke up one day in 2025 and suddenly lefties cared about the stock market and tariffs. Or am I in a fever dream? Happens all the time. Yes, there used to be the moniker was Wall Street is not Main Street. I noticed that now Wall Street is apparently Main Street. Very inexplicable. Garrett Thomas, hey Sticks, did you see that Carmelo Anthony got reduced bail and over $400K in donations, buying a new house and security detail? Thoughts on him potentially being charged as a minor? Ridiculous. I haven't really followed that case, but yes, I'm topically aware of it. No, it seems a little bit weird to me, but I'm not well informed enough to bother commenting on it. I'll look more into the case and maybe I'll do a one-off video tomorrow. H Godzilla. Whoopi is like a discount washed-up predator from AVP. Yeah, I do see a resemblance, actually. That's what I'm talking about. We've got some good news, by the way. We've definitely got to cover this. Honda considers moving some Mexico and Canada production to the U.S. due to tariffs, according to a report. Honda is aiming to ensure 90% of U.S. sales are with vehicles produced domestically, considerably up from what it is currently, by the way. This is going to happen more and more. If you utilize tariffs, they tend to work. That's why so many nations use tariffs. The problem is that the United States has very stubbornly stuck to the notion of free trade. But it's not free trade, that's the whole point. It's stupid trade. If another country is tariffing you at, I don't know, let's say 20-30% on some product, how are you supposed to enter their market and potentially have free trade? There's not going to be any trade going on. You can't compete with them. Unless you have an uber high quality product, there's no way for you to edge into their markets. If you, therefore, use a tariff that is equivalent to theirs, reciprocal tariffing, you can move into their markets. There's a reason why China has retaliated so heavily against the United States and is literally calling us peasants and things like that. They are pissed because they know, technically, you could put 10,000% tariff on the products. We can do this as long as you have the breath to do so. We can do this as long as you want. All we're asking is to negotiate because you've been tariffing our goods and we haven't been tariffing your goods. Well, we're tired of you tariffing our goods. If your products are really good, if your output is of good quality, people in other countries are going to prefer it. And you can potentially make it cheaper, especially for China, because you can manipulate your currency at a whim, apparently. That being said, if we don't do this, what we're being is dumb. Because we're incapable of competing within your market. So if your products are really good, German automobiles or French wine or something like that, then you're going to be able to compete in the US market. People, if the quality is high enough, people will buy it at a markup. And if it's cheaper, of course, they might prefer it as well. You've got that sort of dichotomy. But everything else gets trapped in the middle, and the United States has not involved itself, generally speaking, with tariffs on other countries. That's the problem, because then it means that we're incapable of competing. This destroys jobs, this destroys productivity, this destroys purchasing power, and it undermines the U.S. economy in general. I would argue that in some ways, it falls under national defense more than anything else. A hostile nation with a large economy is capable of edging in and destroying tens of thousands of jobs at a whim. This is, by the way, this would have been so much exacerbated by the TPP. You know, that thing that the Democrats dreamed up? The TPP? You remember that one? On day one, Trump immediately strikes it down and says, nope, it's not going anywhere, I'll veto it. You remember that one? That would have been way worse of a job killer than NAFTA. Thank goodness Trump was re-elected. For at least the next few years, we have more latitude. Copium Poppies, lots of pro-Ukraine bots on Twitter today. Check your DM, Sticks sent you a screenshot showing where Elon's loyalty lies. The Ukraine war pig's visibility isn't being limited, but when we respond, yeah, I have seen that there is definitely a preference taken up by multiple websites. You are correct. I do not have a problem with Ukrainians. Quite the opposite. I'd like to visit Ukraine. Maybe not when they're being actively bombed by the Russians, but someday. But there are people in parts of Ukraine that have been taken over that have no problem with the Russians being there. And the same legacy media that says Putin man bad used to say Zelensky man bad, but all of a sudden he's basically the savior. They literally have votive candles for him. I don't know. I find it a little bit creepy. Cam is here. Spaz Out's here. King of Biltong, bringing the beef, literally speaking. By the way, let's get to our sponsors before we get to the next news story. We have cultivated-mind.com. Use code STICKS, by the way, for a discount on this site. You can get mushroom pills. I took mine earlier. You can even use them in a form of elixir that I've developed. It's tastes wonderful. It's with blood orange and a few other things. Blood orange, a bit of lime. You can put powdered sulfur in there, actually. Also medicinal, in limited quantities. You don't want to use too much of it. Otherwise, it becomes a laxative. But Cultivated Mind does it really, really well. And they've got several varieties available. And I believe, again, they're working on dog biscuits that are infused with cordyceps, if I remember correctly. Cordyceps, reishi, chaga, ashwagandha, and so forth. And they don't taste bad, they go down easy, and they really boost your energy. There's a reason I've got a little bit more pep in my step lately. That's one of them. BiltongUSA.com, the land of yumminess. Use code STICKS again for 10% off. Anton can hook you up with Wagyu. He can cook you up with Cabanassi, which I never even knew existed until, he sent me some, and it's friggin' delicious. The Cabanassi stick's probably the best thing to bring if you're, hiking, because the shredded meat, it might get a little bit more messy. The Cabanassi you can literally shove in your pocket, and I've done this before. You go hiking and you're just munching it, and, a bear attacks you, you just throw out some Cabanassi. I guarantee that's tastier than you are. You can also get Bovrite, Marmite, Vegemite, and much, much more. Stick, Sex, and Hammer mugs and tumblers and shirts also available. And finally, jamandbean.com. That is jamandbean.com, where you can get official Clank Blend coffee. And it smells great. It is the smoothest coffee that I've ever had. I've had a lot of good coffee. Coffee Brand Coffee, Black Rifle. I've had a lot of them. Jam and Bean, in my opinion, definitely does it best, though. Same with the teas. They've got, I can't even remember how many varieties of tea they've got. I recommend the Healer tea. That one, I believe it actually has chamomile in it, so, that's going to be helpful for people who are insomniacs and stuff like that. The Yunnan Jig is really, really tasty, but that's also caffeinated, so that's more of a morning or midday sort of thing. You probably don't want to take that before bed. I made that mistake once. I think I drank 6 cups of it or something like that. Yeah, I didn't get a whole lot of sleep, but that happens anyway sometimes, so I don't know if it was necessarily the tea. I'm just saying it has caffeine in it. So yeah, those are our sponsors. Wasted, good morning from the grave. Did you get the email? Yes, I did. I haven't looked into it yet, but I will later, actually. One tall order. The Pacific Partnership is trans? Yeah, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It would have been a wonderful idea. Yeah, so in other words, you're saying rich people in the U.S. can go and exploit people in Asia, and in return, rich people in Asia can come and exploit people in the U.S. That's a great idea. That won't lead to any diplomatic issues or anything like that. Copium poppies. I didn't have a problem with Ukrainians until they showed their lack of gratitude to the American people and out Americans on kill lists and dogpile me for opposing our involvement in their war. Understand that that is a small minority of Ukrainians. That's like saying that because the United States government has engaged in warmongering that all Americans were gung-ho for it. Oh yeah, we love the Patriot Act. Invading Afghanistan, man, that was a great time. That's not the way that it works. You'll find that most people in the world just want to be left alone. Ukrainians, Russians, etc. The propaganda here, of course, is mainly aimed at Russians, casting off the Russians as terrible people. There's a bunch of vatniks and stuff like that. That's not the way that it works. The average Russian doesn't give a fuck. They just want to be left alone. Same with Ukrainians. BW, China cuts off minerals. I guess that's why Trump wants Greenland. I hope we win the tariff war. If not, China becomes world superpower. But if anyone can pull it off, it's our man Trump. We'll be fine. We don't even need Greenland. That's probably more of a bluff than anything else, although it could be taken seriously. Yeah, if the people of Greenland decide to petition for annexation, technically speaking, any country in the world can do that. If more people in the world, by the way, realized that they were capable of petitioning for territorial annexation, I have a feeling we'd have quite a bit more territory, actually, at this point. Very interesting. Wasted. Pour one out for 4chan and the legend of the chicken jockey. Yes, 4chan is currently down, and apparently the last post made on the website was chicken jockey. And I wondered the other day why so many people were spamming chicken jockey over on Rumble. And then, of course, today I've realized why. Cultivated Mind. Thanks for the shout-out, Sticks. The dog treats don't have cordyceps as it gives them too much energy. The reishi and lion's mane are calming. They will be on the site in a few days. That sounds great. I don't own a dog, but I'd like to see the treats. Then I can show them off. Yeah, between my 3 sponsors, okay. You have a cup of coffee with a mushroom pill in it. Then you smash down some Bovrite on some toast. By the way, I did the other day. And then you're all good, as long as you get some of that Wagyu, maybe a stick of Cabanassi. You're not going to be able to eat just one, by the way. It's so tasty, like, I'll, say, okay, I need a quick snack. I'll bite into the Cabanassi and, well, maybe one more. And then I eat one more. And I'm like, well, maybe a third is, I can take that. And then you end up just eating everything in your path. All watered down with caffeine from Jam and Bean. Green Text Pro. Clanker's Net is the unofficial fan forum of Styx, a community of clank-minded individuals hosted on a sleek old-school PHP forum. Join us! Sounds fun. The Jinx Boy, 13. Think there'll be a trade deal with Japan today. I didn't see that. I'll have to look into it. Miku Huntu. Styx, how will I log post now? This is Janny's fault. Yeah, clean it up, Janny's. Take care of the fucking problem. Mike L. Mount Pew gone, but not forgotten. Goodness. Copium Poppies. Strange. I don't see people with Ukraine flags in their usernames posting anti-Ukraine war shit. Ruron. Sticks. Wow. All the people Whoopi Goldberg said something I agree with. Dismantling Department of Education. Yeah, I know. Hell froze over. One tall order. China's greatest weakness is that a single bomb on the Three Gorges Dam would make over 400 million Chinese people, I can't say that, die, basically. I've got to be sensitive on YouTube, sadly. I'm going to have to do a new tech only stream at some point. Nobody else gives a shit if you say politically incorrect stuff, only YouTube, apparently. Wasted. We will lock your fat ass in jail. Still goes hard. Letitia deserves it too. I agree. One tall order. All these shitposts and green texts will be lost like tears in the rain. No, they'll restore things. I'm sure that they'll be back up within a matter of days or maybe a few weeks. 4chan has died many times before. They always come back. It's too iconic. It's impossible for it to die. I thought of something funny. Imagine Elon Musk buys 4chan. Oh, Jesus. If he wants to really piss off the left. Exclusive. Trump admin plans overhaul of Endangered Species Act. Now, when you look through this topically, especially from the left-wing perspective, it seems like a bad idea. Oh my God. They're going to change the definition of harm under the Endangered Species Act. And so they're going to destroy a bunch of species. They're going to in the corporate sense. They're going to develop a bunch of areas that are critical habitats. They're going to destroy all of these animals. But there are a few examples in here that probably people should know about. And it's very, very funny. There is the endangered dusky gopher frog. The Obama administration designated 1,500 acres of private land, by the way, in Louisiana, talk about mimetics, as a critical habitat for the shy frog. Even though the reptile, and frogs are amphibians, but, was only known to inhabit wetlands in southern Mississippi. Then you have that, what's the other species there? There are several of them. Then there was the Johnston's frankinia, a bluish-gray shrub that enjoyed protected status for decades until 2003, when the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service deemed its population had recovered. Conservatives complain, it's not just conservatives, by the way, that the government didn't remove the designation until 2016. More recently, and this is one I think that I actually included in a previous live stream, a rare buckwheat, which is meaningless, gave the Biden administration fits. Though one of over 300 varieties, Thames buckwheat, grows only near lithium and boron deposits, an inconvenient horticultural headache for industries eager to mine those minerals critical for electric vehicle batteries. The flowering plant earned endangered status in 2022. Here's my thought, and I know this may not sound environmentalistic, but here's my thought. If a species is not particularly unique or particularly useful or particularly important within an environment, then it shouldn't be able to gain endangered species status. If it's incapable of cohabiting with human development, it should just go extinct. Now, this is not the case for 99% of species, just to be clear. But there are a handful of instances in which something like Thames buckwheat, for example, it's not important, it's not really useful, it's unique, it could potentially, by the way, be promulgated elsewhere. You could send in horticulturalists to do so, but the government is more willing to simply disallow you from mining hundreds of billions of dollars worth of lithium with a rock crusher and shit, instead of simply transferring the plant elsewhere. I'm sure that it's capable of growing in other senses as well, and you can always take a little lithium or boron and put it in the potting soil. It's perfectly possible to do this. I'm sure that I could accomplish it, having grown many things in my life. That's what I believe. So I agree with the Trump administration on this one. It's not that the idea of preventing extinction is a bad one. It's that if it comes at the cost of the ability of society to function to the point where it can even preserve these species, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So that's what I would say. Yeah. All you have to do is genetically sequence them anyway, and you can probably grow them in a laboratory, so. I mean, in theory, we could do that. That's not what I'm suggesting. Where was that other one? There was some sort of fish that, it was Nixon, ironically, that passed the act, by the way. And yet, it's hilarious. The leftoids are the ones that are propping it up. I'm not a crook. I work for every cent. Let's see. Oh yes, this is the part that I really wanted to read out. The White House doesn't have to look far for environmental activism allegedly dressed up as conservation. Consider the snail darter. The little freshwater fish swims in eastern Tennessee rivers and was listed as endangered in 1973. Designation that halted construction of the Tellico Dam. The only problem? Scientists now say it does not exist. There is technically no snail darter. Thomas Neer, curator of ichthyology, so this is a scientist saying this. This is not a conspiracy theorist. It's not, somebody that the government would have a problem with necessarily, although I'm sure at the time they probably did. At the Yale Peabody Museum, and a professor at the university's fish biology lab told the New York Times. Can't wait to see the aquarium in NOLA again, by the way. Opponents of the dam insisted that the 2-inch non-edible fish was a distinct species and successfully used its protected status to stop construction. Decades later, Neer and other scientists concluded that the snail darter is no different than another unremarkable and very much not endangered fish, the stargazing darter. It is Exhibit A, the professor told the Times, of the conservation species concept, where people are going to decide a species to be distinct because it will now have a downstream conservation implication. The idea is that not even a subspecies, but just an unremarkable variety of the same exact species is the reason to, hold up. Trump is going after this. Apparently, he's had problems on numerous occasions with environmentalism and environmental law. So he's got a personal vendetta. Yeah, the snail darter. Now, it's, I know that I know a snail is not a fish. That's just the name that they gave to it. But the thing is, it's exactly the same as this other fish. It's only mildly genetically distinct. It's not endangered at all. But they used it to prevent a dam from being constructed. They probably had an ulterior motive. I can't imagine it was actually for environmental purposes. If it was, instead of going to court, they would go out into the wetlands and pick up trash or something like that. I've done this many times myself. Can't even imagine how many thousands of pounds of trash I've cleaned up out back. The local kids apparently go there and party because they had that one tree decorated with Coors Light cans. I took the cans and recycled them. Rolled a 50-gallon steel oil drum out of the woods. It's right in the backyard now. This comes in somewhat useful. I can burn things in it. I can make charcoal and shit. I've cleaned up, I can't even tell you how much plastic, how many bottles and shit like that I've picked up in the woods. People have no respect for the environment. Pick up trash, plant a tree, make a victory garden. These are the ways to clean up the environment. Not a bunch of regulation. If you expect the government to do it, I want Whoopi Goldberg to weigh in on it. We should just get rid of the EPA. While I like Lee Zeldin, he should be effectively out of a job. Here's why. Because the EPA doesn't protect the environment. That's the whole point. All it is a bunch of red tape. It makes absolutely no sense. If you want to do it your fucking self. Pick up the goddamn bottle. Plant the goddamn tree, etc. That's what I do. An El Salvadoran man was convicted of murdering a mom of 5, says Metal Mouth. Yeah, I mean, this happens all the time. That's the problem. Next news story. Trump dares the Supreme Court to do something. Trump is currently attempting to stare down the Supreme Court, along with a bunch of federal courts. He's having problems with the judiciary, as you've seen, because there's no legislative methodology to stop him from doing the things that he wants to do, and because he's capable of signing executive orders and holds the House and Senate, liberals have resorted to begging their shill judges to try to block Donald Trump's actions. They've been successful on a number of occasions. But Donald Trump appears to begin to ignore their decisions. He's pulling an Andrew Jackson. Famously, Andrew Jackson was knocked down by the court. And then he said, well, let him enforce it. What are they going to do? I'm the commander-in-chief. The military's behind me. So he got away with it. Donald Trump likely will too. He seems to have considerable loyalty among the military, a reasonable amount of favorability among the public, and he has the legislature. The courts can't really do anything to stop him, in some cases. It depends on how much aggrieved the legal system would feel. If it was something egregious, I think generally people would say, okay, knock it off. But if it's just some sort of topical, obviously nonsensical complaint that Democrats happen to have, utilizing a shopped judge, then generally speaking, I think that Trump can simply ignore them, and he probably should. Donald Trump took one step closer to openly defying an order from the Supreme Court today, effectively daring the justices to defend the law or pack up and go home. President Nayib Bukele of El Salvador has emerged as a confederate of Trump's, accepting planes full of Venezuelan citizens removed from the United States. Last month, the U.S. government deported Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran man living in Maryland with protected legal status. I like how they insert that, by the way. In the Atlantic, as the Atlantic first reported, the Trump administration acknowledged in court that Abrego Garcia's deportation was an administrative error last week. The Supreme Court unanimously ordered the executive branch to facilitate his return to the United States. Since then, the Justice Department has dragged its feet. It has filed required reports to a district judge late and has refused to say what it's doing to bring Abrego Garcia back to the United States. But whether this was defiance or merely delay was unclear until today. In an Oval Office press conference this afternoon, the White House revealed the answer. It is defiance, at least for now. Both the U.S. and El Salvador are pretending that they have no power to do anything about Abrego Garcia, a performance of smirking, depraved, and wholly unconvincing absurdity. You can tell that this is a little bit of a politically lopsided article. The fact is that there's an allegation that this is an MS-13 member. Now, whether this can be proven before a court of law remains to be seen. That being said, if there's a suspicion that somebody is a member of a significant criminal cartel, it would not make sense to facilitate their return. If you do that, they could disappear into the woodwork, so to speak. And this is not a citizen of the United States. It's somebody under protected status, which in some cases probably shouldn't even exist. One tall order. I'll be on vacation in Destin, Florida for the next week, so won't be in chat. Any clankers who can recommend things to do or see in the area? Oh, there probably are. Wasted Sticks, the Pirate Wizard Vampire sounds like an anime. Yes, I'm the Vampirate. I wish I could change my username without losing my unique URL. I guess I'd go by Vampirate or something. It's probably already taken anyway. Water. Red Bull. What more do you need? I love this one. Talk about sloganeering. There is a new slogan that's being floated, and I wanted to preemptively tell people that they should reject it. MAGA's class warfare against knowledge workers is personal. So it's not professors. It's not teachers. It's not 50% pieces of shit that aren't doing their job and are simply there because they're part of a union and can never be fired. They are knowledge workers. Yes, they're going to impart learning to you. Can I ask a question? Have you heard the slogan before? Because it seems to have emerged out of absolutely nowhere. And when this sort of thing happens, I've noticed it tends to be propaganda more than anything else. By the way, I wish I had a big-ass pizza right now. I just randomly got a craving for a mushroom pizza. Happens all the time. Much of the nihilistic destructiveness and rage unleashed by the second Trump administration, again, a very fair article, by the way, has been understandably attributed to the intense and wide-ranging grievances of the 47th president. Donald Trump's unlikely comeback from the failed post-election coup of 2021 was fueled by his determination to settle scores with the many individuals and institutions that had thwarted him as president and pursued him in the courts and the media as ex-president. The article is purely lopsided. In 100%, like the person who wrote this quite clearly was not a fan of Donald Trump. I'm just saying they might have an ulterior motive. But while it's no surprise that some of Trump's closest associates share his thirst for vengeance and desire to gloat over the supine figures of their vanquished enemies, there's something, it also waxes theatrical at times. There's something deeply personal about the entire MAGA drive to destabilize the country that cannot really be explained by the vicarious enjoyment of Trump's comeuppance of his detractors. The targets of his veritable explosion of executive actions are much broader than any identifiable group of Democratic or establishment Republican activists, or anyone complicit in the alleged stolen election of 2020 or the alleged legal persecutions of 2023 and 24. And there's a growing suspicion that an entire class of Americans is being targeted for political, cultural, and perhaps economic extinction as part of Trump's vengeance tour, as Franklin Foer discussed in The Atlantic. And apparently the moniker that they've invented for this class, I'm not even going to bother reading his quote because it's nonsensical. Professional Managerial Class, or the PMC. I've never heard this term before, and the term knowledge workers is even more ludicrous. The fact is that because a person is in the educational system does not mean that they're spreading knowledge at all. This reminds me of like the Patriot Act or something like that. Even DOGE is sloganeering, by the way, Department of Government Efficiency. It's just that the slogan is apt because it's increased the government's efficiency. Well, okay, you may not agree with their methods. You may not agree with where the cuts are being made or anything like that, but it has increased the actual efficiency. So that is still sloganeering, but at the very least, it's a slogan that's apt. If you have a slogan that says, have it your way, but you can't have it your way, then that would be a big problem now, wouldn't it? Patriot Act comes to mind, and things like that. The Endangered Species Act comes to mind. This is just sloganeering. What are you talking about? Knowledge workers. I used to call them teachers when I was a kid. Some of them taught better than others. I guess the idea is that if they're unionized and you try to fire them because they're not doing their job, that you're the problem. That's basically what I'm reading from this. Again, just like the Patriot Act was really the unpatriotic act. Yeah, okay, we're trying to increase national security. How are we going to do this? We're going to spy on you and try and spy on your library records unsuccessfully. That was blocked by federal court, actually, at the time under the Bush administration. We're going to censor you. We're going to censor the radio. We're going to go after anyone that disagrees with the goddamn government. We're going to create free speech zones so that you can't, potentially raise hell because the war is unpopular. And then we're going to go and start several wars on credit. Well, that makes a whole lot of sense. Oh, by the way, we're going to spend years in Afghanistan hunting down Osama bin Laden, even though he wasn't even in Afghanistan at the time. Yeah, that's really patriotic. It makes a whole lot of sense. Same is true of most government programs. Whenever they give it an acronym, I've noticed, it tends to be sloganeering. And the acronym typically doesn't actually synchronize with what the purpose of the bill or the executive order, etc. is. It happens like literally weekly, dude. One tall order. Sticks. Don't forget the Pharmacy Museum in NOLA. The next block over from the Natchez. Yeah, I'll have to see that. King of Biltong. Cows are not endangered. Eat as much biltong as you like. Almost 50% protein, packed with B12, creatine, iron, zinc, and much more. www.biltongusa.com. Code STICKS for 10% off. I recommend getting some. That reminds me to eat my daily dose of Bovrite. I'm going to put some of this in the soup that I'm going to make tomorrow. God, that's going to be delicious. Yeah, I'm going to be making a veggie soup. Garden veggie. But I want to put the Bovrite in. I know that it's not vegetarian, but that'll really kick it up. Ha ha ha, that's too salty. No, I'll eat the whole container. It's delicious. Apache. That's such an up-your-own-butt title. Every job requires knowledge, but they're putting their white-collar, shit-lived government jobs on a pedestal. Exactly. Knowledge imparters. Wyvern Rider, talking about ridiculous slogans. Did you see the AstroTurf Fight the Oligarchy slogan the DNC is trying to push for the AOC Standards campaigning? Deliciously ironic. Yeah, these people aren't wealthy. AOC got tens of thousands of dollars in a GoFundMe just to solve her abuela's crisis down in Puerto Rico. And then for some odd reason, without her abuela being involved at all, it was canceled. It's because she pulled the lever. Somehow you're allowed to stop a GoFundMe for a relative simply because you don't like the people that are doing the funding. I don't know. Their terms of service have been whack-ass for a very long time. Alan Smithy, calling everyone workers is intentional. Yes, that's another thing that I noticed. I'm glad that you did as well. Good on you. Yeah, calling everyone workers, So basically peasants. That's basically the insinuation. Knowledge workers. The hell does that mean? No, teachers and professors and shit like that. They're not some special class of people that should enjoy some protected status simply because they happen to be in teaching. If they're part of a union, I don't care. If they want to join a union, that's perfectly fine. But they should be able to be fired if they're not doing their job. It makes out the educational system makes no sense. Even Whoopi Goldberg agrees, apparently. One Tall Order, Sticks, another song for you. Nancy Pelosi diss by Christ Dillinger. That sounds good. I'll look that up. I'll look that up. Nice. Yeah, you'd be surprised. A lot of people have this stereotype of people that are involved in rap being like really far left and shit. But I've noticed that more often than not, they're actually fucking based. Look like Crank Lucas, for example. Immortal Technique. Apparently this individual. Kanye, I mean, he's kind of gone insane, but at the same time, he's certainly not a far leftist. Copium Poppies, Sticks, did you get your Manson ticket? If so, you're in for a treat. Wish he'd add dates for the Pacific Northwest again this tour now that the album's out. No, I'll have to skip it this time, but I'll be looking at his tour dates. I am going to go to a Marilyn Manson concert. I also want to go to a Ghost concert. I've heard that he's not as good in person, but his latest tracks are some of the best things that he's actually made. Copium Poppies, but yeah, I got a ticket to see the Mars Volta at the same venue I saw Manson last time. Nice. Yeah, King of Biltong's got a great point. If you are useless at your job, join a union. Exactly. Now, I don't mind if people create unions, but it must be voluntary, and it must not include some sort of weird rider where you simply cannot fire a person if they're a public worker. If it's private sector, it's a little bit different. Because then, the hammer can fall and the executive can say, well, you're all being shit fucks. Bye. Basically go away. They should have that veto power, so to speak. Public workers, though, are paid for by tax money. So if a teacher's not doing their job, why am I paying state taxes towards them? I mean, there have been cases, literal cases. There was an expose, this was like 10 years ago. There was an expose, I can't remember what city it was in, what school system it was in, but there were teachers that were literally being paid to sit there and watch TV. They were not allowed to teach, but they were still being paid because the union would not allow them to be fired. That makes a lot of sense. David's Harp, if I killed myself, would I burn in hell for eternity? No, but you should not kill yourself. King of Biltong, try Cummion's range of functional red teas infused with functional ingredients to help you through your day. Available on www.biltongusa.com. 10% off for Sticks listeners only. Use code STICKS. That's right, I've got to drink that later. I think I'm going to use that chamomile tea later and put like fucking 5 bags in the cup. Could use it right now. Yeah, but then I'd have to boil water. I usually just use hot water from the faucet when I make tea. I know this is a little bit unorthodox. I find that boiling it actually reduces its potency, though. Sigil, if you kill yourself, you go to hell because you murdered and couldn't get forgiveness. Well, we're all going to hell anyway. We're talking about this time fairly soon, by the way. That being said, don't worry about it too much. But, just live your life. If you have severe depression and stuff like that, there are other ways to compensate. I suggest doing something positive for the world. Something preferably that's also positive for you. If you're producing and you're gaining productivity while helping others, hey, there's no sin in that. That's a great thing. That's the way that you should do it. It's like with my books project. I'm making money off of those books, but I'm also enlightening people about things that they may not have had any clue about. Links in the description, by the way, pinned at the top on YouTube. Because, a lot of that knowledge could potentially be lost to the sands of time. The number of copies, original copies of some of those works, probably barely number in the hundreds. So you're a couple of house fires and a couple of floods away from the book not existing at all. It might not even be in the Library of Congress. There was this one book that I edited, for example, once. It was written by a couple of lesbians from Alaska, actually, and it was on the Ouija board. And they made the claim that elemental spirits inhabited the Ouija board, and this is why it worked. And this is real. It's on I can't remember which category it's in, but it was probably the strangest goddamn work that I've ever read in my friggin' life. Literally, a couple of old Alaskan lesbians wrote a book on Ouija and claimed that the board was inhabited by spirits. And this is why the planchette worked. They must have been having a very good time. I have a feeling laudanum may have been involved in that one. Laudanum, an extraordinary amount of alcohol. Maybe they were using marijuana. That's always possible, too. But you'd be surprised at all the crazy literature that you can get your hands on. I've read some weird stuff. Dozens and dozens of herbals, works on demonology. There was that one with Sinistrari that was, I believe, 1832. And he claimed that when babies, were born and they were messed up, that it was the result of cadavers being inhabited by demons, raising from the grave, and then fornicating with them. Obviously they have to go back to their graves. They didn't really understand the decomposition process at the time, so this made sense. He was from the Catholic side. And then you have the more rationalistic works. There's a huge war, by the way, within the occult and spiritual sort of world back around the 1800s. It waged from roughly that time through the early 20th century. And it was between people who were dedicated atheists, people who were dedicated rationalists. So they may not have been atheists, but they believed in rationalizing things. The Catholics, and then the Low Church sort of Protestant movement. To an extent Judaism, but not really. Not within the United States and Western Europe, certainly. And, they literally had debates out in public over these subjects. Because people didn't have TV, they didn't have radio and stuff like that, so they would literally go and listen to people have monologues and hold debates and stuff like that. It was considered something that was a form of entertainment. And sometimes there was public participation. The sort of trope of people throwing cabbages and tomatoes and shit at people on stage? That's sort of where it comes from. This was basically public amusement more than anything else. and you're getting a more literate population, and so more people are reading, and more people are getting interested in debate and public dialogue and things like that. At the same time, almost at exactly the same time, you get the rise of organic medicine. So then you have another debate. Mineral medicine, the old school approach, which was not necessarily great because they were giving out arsenic and antimony and shit like that. Homeopathy, the Thomsonian method, which is sort of twain with that in some ways, and so forth. And then, of course, over that next half century, you get the rise of like the sawbones sort of medicine, modern, well, not modern by our standards, but then modern surgical techniques, which probably didn't work as well as the homeopathic method ultimately. And then you get the rise of the second wave of homeopathy, in which you've got microdosing effectively at the dawn of the 20th century. I edited a work on that. It was actually by someone who joined, I believe, the Nazi movement. I can't remember his name. And a lot of it was about trying to nullify the effects of sewer gas, actually. People would get hit by the, what's it called? Hydrogen monoxide or something like that. But then they would just faint. They'd be next to the sewer and it would outgas and they'd get all messed up. And trying to formulate different medicines to try to counteract those effects. The history of medicine is absolutely fascinating. The history of herbalism is absolutely fascinating. Don't even get me started on the lobelia craze. Once the Thomsonian school said, hey, lobelia is a mild purgative, it's actually not going to kill you, and it cures everything. There was an enormous debate. Hundreds of books were written on the subject. Some people said it was the devil, and some people said it was the savior. They had a whole goddamn debate just about this one species, lobelia. It's a flower, a little flower. Anyways, I'm done ranting about that. AK Sam knows best. Why did you block me from your YouTube chat, pussy? I don't believe that you're banned from my chat, actually. I've never even seen you comment before. Oh yes, hydrogen sulfide. Thank you, Sigil. Yes, it was hydrogen sulfide. Metalmouth, no offense, but this talk about suicide is hitting an old emotional wound for me. I'm a suicide survivor. My apologies. But yes, don't self-harm and stuff like that. Zeta, oxalia is delicious. That reminds me of something. Do you mean oxalis? I think you mean oxalis. Never tried it before. It grows a little bit out in the swamps out back. Just got a text. Sheep burgers. Can you recommend an easy Cajun dish to make at home? You'll have to Google that. Literally anything Cajun is going to be delicious, though. Just Google easy Cajun dishes or something like that. There's probably 10 million recipes on there. I've looked up so many recipes online. And usually I don't really follow the recipe. I sort of play by ear, so to speak. And sometimes I modify them because I can imagine how they'll taste, and then I can modify them appropriately to my taste. Oh, Excel, you mean sweet and sours. Yeah, sweet and sours are delicious. The Jinx Boy. Think the dollar will lose its power? No, I don't, actually. Dabu3. Don't feel bad, dude. I'm banned and muted from Lionel Nation's live chats. Freaking boomers. Yeah, no, if I have banned somebody from chat or from commenting on YouTube, there are only a very small number of reasons why that could be. I don't remember all of the usernames, so, I can't really do anything about that. you have to be either repeatedly spamming, defaming one of my subscribers or harassing them, or doing the like heckle, or you have to be like, spamming the spammy links, so like trying to scam people or something like that. Legalize drugs, but only really weird ones, like the psychedelic reindeer piss. Amanita muscaria, yes, of course. I've used it before. I think I used it 5 or 6 times. One time I got the dosage exactly right, and it felt like I was floating, and everything got all glowy. And I can understand why it's associated with like Christmas iconography and stuff like that. But then one time I took too much, and it may not have been properly prepared anyway, because I was getting it off of eBay. And I became completely delusional. I was trying to sleep, and all of a sudden, for some reason, everything went black. And there was a picture of Australia in white outline. And it kept zooming in and out and moving around in my vision. And then I puked. And it was terrible, by the way. And then I almost immediately felt better. But if you get too much of the muscarine, or you use too much in general, you can hallucinate, like actual hallucinations. If you use less of the dose and it's properly prepared, it's a mild psychedelic. So it's a little bit more like psilocybin or LSD or something like that. Nonetheless, disclaimer, of course, I'm not saying that you should attempt to use Amanita muscaria because it is poisonous. I don't know of that many cases where people have actually died using it, but I'm assuming it probably doesn't have a great effect on your liver, based on the chemical profile. Copium. If you are suicidal, remember, that is what your enemies want. Stay alive out of sheer spite. That's sort of where I'm at sometimes. David's harp. If you had dreads, you would own them. Dreadlocks? No, thank you. That would be that. I don't think that I would look good that way. If there's loaded sticks, if there's ever a schism in MAGA, it's on Israel and Palestine. True, yeah. King of Biltong. We stream every Friday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern and Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. We do some light banter whilst cooking live. Join in the fun by following our channel, rumble.com/c/eatitantons. Linux Debian, free will or determinism? Free will, but guided free will. I believe in the ability of entities and powers that are beyond the physical reality we're currently perceiving to influence what happens. But ultimately, I do not believe in determinism now. I used to. I used to believe, well, at the moment of creation of the universe, every atom, every subatomic particle, every energy, and so forth was accounted for. And so, theoretically speaking, if you had an infinite computer to actually look into the spin of the particles and so forth, you could tell the future. I no longer believe that. I believe in free will, but I believe that it can be guided by otherworldly powers. I believe that this reality is not the only one that exists. When I die, for example, when this physical vehicle is retired, as it will be, probably soon, I fully expect that there's a totally different realm in which you live. For example, and I talked about this the other day in one of my occult videos, I believe that it's sort of like when you're driving a car. So imagine that the person is a spirit, a soul, whatever you want to term it. The car is the physical body. This is the car. The spirit, the actual self, is not the actual car. It's completely, it's completely disembodied from it, effectively. It happens to be utilizing it to interact with the world around it. Why is that? I've got my theories. I won't talk about them right now. But that being said, that's what I believe. So your body is nothing more than a car. Well, when your old car dies, you can always get a new car. There's nothing problematic about that. So I don't worry about death or anything like that. Doesn't matter. Sigil, Copium Puppies. Is your favorite song to play Daddy, Would You Like Some Sausage? That sounds vaguely sexual. Either that or it's about a really good breakfast, I suppose. Yes, I believe that the body is nothing more than a meat machine, so to speak. You are a meat skeleton powered by stardust. What do you have to worry about? Kind of an old meme. If winter's loaded. I think Trump admin has a point on college Palestine protests because leftoids simply don't know how to protest. They disrupt classes and activities, harass, and try to cancel everyone who disagrees. I disagree with you partially. I understand that leftoids can be pernicious, and I do not believe the heckler's veto should be legal. But I don't believe in basing it specifically on, hey, you're pro-Palestine or anti-Israel or something like that. I don't care if somebody hates Israel. Just don't use the heckler's veto. You don't have the right to prevent other people from speaking. Other people have the right to speak. That's all. Just the same as if you get on a soapbox in the town square and you start talking about how you support Palestine and Palestinian liberation. I don't even care if you're saying, hey, I love Hamas. All you're doing is speaking. You're not blowing anyone up. You're not doing anything particularly wrong. You should have the right to do so. Gotten several texts in the last few minutes. Let's see if I can dig them out. That was my sister messaging me. I don't even know what she's referring to, though, so I have to ask her after the live stream. I don't know. Sometimes people send me weird messages, and it's like it's not entirely certain what they mean. My mom does this pretty much every day. Like, so she'll say weird shit, and, It's because she's a stoner. Wasted Bonehead, trust me, us skeletons want nothing to do with you filthy meat sacks. Hashtag free the skeletons. Copium, it's not sexual, it's about literal sausage. It's a reference to the movie Freddy Got Fingered. Why does that ring a bell? I think someone mentioned that to me at one point. But yeah. That reminds me, I'd like to have some breakfast sausages. You can't get those over in the Netherlands. You can get knockwurst. You can get bratwurst. You can get like 10,000 kinds of fucking meat over there. But they don't have the little breakfast sausages. The ones they're probably full of preservatives, and that's what makes them tasty. I could not find them anywhere. It was impossible. So, I had to resort to eating knockwurst mostly. It was very strange. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen Freddy Got Fingered. It must be a grotesque movie or a really warped comedy, considering the title. Zeta, invent caffeinated sausages. That could actually work. So instead of having your morning cup of coffee, you just eat several sausages and you get the same amount of caffeine. That could work. But then I'd be undermining jam and beans, so I'm not going to do that. Bratwurst, grilled and slathered in whole grain mustard, is yummy. Oh, I've had that. Another thing that the Dutch have is it's called haring, and it's basically fish with pickles and onions that are chopped up really fine, minced up. And I've had haring several times. And some people, apparently, they find it abhorrent. They absolutely hate it. I think that it's delicious. Dutch food, sometimes it's a little bit hit or miss. Sometimes it's delicious, like the haring and certain other things. Then sometimes it's a little bit on the bland side. For some reason, the Dutch went half the way around the world in order to obtain spices. But instead of actually learning how to use them, they simply sold them all. That appears to be the history of the Netherlands, actually. It's pretty funny when you think about it. I can't wait to get back to the Netherlands sometime soon because I would really like to sample some of the food again. They've got these, I don't even know exactly what it is. It's like a bready roll, and it's got like a liquefied meat inside of it. It's delicious. I can't remember exactly what it was called. But yeah, you eat those all day. You eat them with mustard usually. Copium Poppies, Sticks, you need to stop the stream right now and watch Freddy Got Fingered. It's frankly unacceptable that you haven't seen it. Bad, Sticks. Bad. Maybe I'll watch it later. Jesus. No, 92 Cat. Not Vienna sausages. Totally different. I hate Vienna sausage. Anyways, I'm going to go offline now, so please send no more super chats. I guess I have to watch Freddy Got Fingered. I don't know. I don't know if I'll enjoy it. I have no idea about the synopsis. Seda should adopt a tulip bulb economy based on weed? Yeah, that could probably work. Anyways, I'm going to go offline and grab up more news items for tomorrow. I've got to do my main docket at the very least. Then I've got a bunch of other stuff that I've got to do. This is going to be an extreme afternoon, actually. Lots and lots to do. That's about all. Peace out.